Hello and a massive warm welcome to this week's edition of the Soul Sync podcast. I'm releasing this episode slightly earlier than I normally do because I am going on a much needed break. And this next guest story really touched my heart. It touched my heart so deeply and I was gripped from the start of the story very much to the end. The guest was also the most beautiful storyteller and she'd been through so much in her life. And despite the story being really sad in places, I think that what does come through in the story is a real testament to the strength and resilience and unwavering faith that this guest had and how the guest managed to turn negatives into positives. So without further ado, I introduce to you Nancy Hart. This really is a story and a journey of resilience, redemption and divine connection. Step into the extraordinary world of Nancy Hart, where every trial and tribulation has been transformed into a testament of strength, resilience and unwavering faith. Now, born into the unforgiving streets of Manhattan, Nancy's early years were marked by child abuse, hardship, trauma and unimaginable adversity. But amidst the darkness, she discovered a profound connection with the intangible, a guiding presence she lovingly names Whispers. From the tender age of 5 months, when Nancy can clearly remember memories, she clung to Whisper's comforting voice, finding solace and wisdom in the midst of chaos and despair. With each whispered word, she learned to navigate the turbulent waters of her tumultuous upbringing, defying the odds and emerging as a beacon of light in a world really shrouded in darkness. Now, in her gripping memoir, Whispers, Sinners and Saints, Nancy shares her harrowing story, and today she's going to share some of it with us. You're going to be gripped from the start to the end. Enjoy. So, Nancy, firstly, a massive warm welcome onto the Soul Sync podcast.
I'm so glad to have you host me. I've been looking forward to this. You have no idea. I think you're just like a star. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Well, I know that you listen to the podcast as well, but this episode is about you and your story. It literally blew me away. And I obviously I only know the tip of the iceberg at the moment. So let's go into the story because it is an absolutely heart-wrenching story, but there is an underlying message I know in this story. So take us back in time to, the beginning.
Okay, I will happily do that. So, at the beginning of this story, when I was writing the book, first of all, I did not realize how much my life really started with my mother's life. We were very much connected, perhaps because I don't have brothers and sisters or uncles or aunts or a father. And really, she was the only person I had until I was 5 years old. And and then after that, I don't want to ruin the second book that I'm writing now, but she was the crux. So I had to go back and realize that my story is at least a half of hers. And she did go through the Holocaust. She was a child of the Holocaust, and our family was taken away. That's why, hence, I don't have aunts and uncles and all the beautiful things that some people are so well endowed with. It's such a richness and a wonderful thing. But my mother was not okay.
Mm.
She was definitely affected from the war, and also um, she was an illegitimate child born in 1932, which was just not an easy thing for her. When people would walk and see her with her mother, they'd cross the street. So um, when she would beat me, as always, is whenever she would see me, and I would ask her, why are you doing this? She would tell me that she's beating me to release everything that was wrongly done unto her. I was to pay the price for it. So to deal with that, um, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. I was badly neglected. And at 5 months old, she was working at a bakery, of course, to support us, right? She already did not have, she was married, but the husband had left, and that's a little bit, I believe, to the second story. But she put me in a basket in the back in the bathroom of the bakery. And I have a pinky here that's not, it's broken. And what had happened is my pinky, I was getting too big for the basket, and my pinky was stuck in the basket, and she picked me out, and I cried for 2 days. Now, how do I know this? Okay. Well, at 5 months old, I was in so much pain, and I was thrashing my body around, and I was asking, I was screaming, which is all you can do when you're a baby. I want somebody to hold me. I want somebody to make this okay. And I would see the sun go, and it makes different shapes and forms of things, of shadows. And I noticed that later on that happened 2 times. Now, I didn't know how to count when I was 5, but two is kind of easy because I remember the revolution, and it was really strange. The sun had shifted things, and it was 2 times. Later
So
on,
you remember the memories of being 5 months old?
yes, yes,
Wow.
yes, because this was so shocking to me what had happened. I was crying, and it was the first time I had an out of body experience. The pain, I remember I was so hot that the tear was coolness coming down my face, and that I stuck my tongue out to get the salt and to get some sustenance. And I was like, oh, that is that is good. I want more
Oh
of that.
my
I'm thirsty.
goodness.
And my eyes, I remember, like, one was shut because it was crystallized from the tears, right? And
Mhm.
I remember this because my brain, I also remember, was just starved always for some kind of stimulus. I mean, I have words for this today to explain it better. At that time, I didn't have stimulus, of course, but I knew I was hungry for something. Like, I would even say, like, a mobile above me, something to look at me. That's why I remembered the shadows, because I would study them so well. And I knew where my bed was because I would, like, take mental pictures of it and go, look at this, what's going on, something to focus in on. And then at first I was thrashing my body and asking for help. And I was crying, saying, I'm in pain. First, I'm crying for pain. Then I was crying because here's going all this time and no one's coming. And that pain from that, of nobody coming, was just so strong for me, and it so painful. So I thrashed my body, and of course it made it worse. Then I realized, oh, don't thrash your body. It's making the pain, even worse. But then I remember I'm looking down on this thing, and I see where I am, and I see it's plastic mattress. I am naked, no diaper, and I'm sloshing around in excrement. And I
So
say,
you rose out your own body
I rose. Yes, I
uh,
rose out of my body.
at 5 months old. You rose out your body. You remember that. And sorry, carry on. I'm just trying to get the context here because this is, an incredible story.
Yes, and I rose out of my body. I saw myself as a red blob, and I see, like, this thing is, you, I don't know if people ever done it, but I saw it. I'm my mouth is open to release a cry, and nothing's coming out anymore. It's just so
Mm.
hoarse. Throat is sore from crying so much, and no sound is coming. And I said, what is that blob? And I hear, that is you. And I said, that's me. The shock of it threw me back into my body. And I said, whispers. I called it, I didn't have a name for it at that second. I said, oh, I know you. You've been with me. I know you from before. You're always with me. And then we started a dialogue. And what's interesting too is it was only at 5 months old that I realized that I've already been in contact and communication with this. I don't know what it is. I just call it a supreme being. Sometimes I call it, some people say it's an angel because I do hear it talk to me in my right ear. And I remember from being before I was born, before I was born, wanting to come uh, down to wherever it is because everybody was already going and they were just little sparks of light. And I said, when is it my turn to go? I'm there's nothing going on here. My brain is wants the stimulation. And he says, if you go now, it's going to be very hard life. And I kept saying, I don't care. I have to get out of here. There can't be worse than this because there was nobody to talk to.
The fact that there's a lot that's going around my head already from this
Yes,
part of
yes,
the story, and I think
yes.
that for you, because I can't imagine myself as a 5 month old thinking consciously, thinking kind of, the way you describe it is thinking like an adult coming out of your body. And then, having this internal dialogue where a baby is a baby. You would even think a baby would do that. And so that's so interesting in itself. And the fact that had this voice come through.
Mhm.
So it's mind blowing. So carry on. Tell us how the story went. So you were hearing these whispers. You sort of made a more than understandable plight to leave the life that you was in.
Yeah, I think that's what my body was. I think I might have, I think I was going to die if since my body had left. And I guess it wasn't my time because he had stepped in and he had been there all along. He had been telling me, hello, you're not alone. And I just shoot him off because um, I wanted somebody to come and pick me up, which I do write about, that whole dialogue that happened. And I did say to him, hey, now that I've got you, uh, how come I can talk to you and you can hear me when everybody else just hears blah, 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 blah? You know how babies talk. What's going on
Mm-mm.
here? And this, he says, is babies know too much and you must forget what you know. And I said, well,
Mm.
what if I don't? And he didn't answer me. And you had to understand that when you just ask them a question, they don't like come back and it's not like a conversation like you and I are having here. It was, he said, he made me, he made me keep pushing on. And I said, well, what if I don't? What if I don't? What if I don't? I don't know how long transpires. And he finally says, well, that'll be different. And I said, I'm not forgetting. And I literally, because I had nothing else to do, I would go over everything that I remembered from the beginning every day and go through every detail as much as I could. And at least, I don't know how many times, but until I could start writing. And then I'd write a couple of words down, and
Mm.
then it grew from there. But uh, yeah, I do remember having been before being born. And I do remember hearing the voices that were with me that were in the same, I would say, for lack of a better word, the plane that we were on, meaning a dimension that we were on, and they had turned into sparks before they were leaving. And one thing I do have to add is I wanted to get out of there so bad. not because it was bad, but I was supposed to sit and do nothing for a long time, that these sparks were saying, hey, will you do this for me? Will you do that for me? And I was like, I'll do anything, just get me out of here. And I took on some of the, what do you think, what do you call it? Like maybe karma that they had to pay, if that's possible.
Mm.
And I wonder if that's why I had such a hard life when I came here, or because he did say to me, okay, I did speak to the others and they've decided if you really want to go, you do have to understand that you will have a very hard life, but I will be with you. And I said, yeah, get me out of here. And
Do you know what though? Because I doing this podcast all the time, I've heard a lot of stories, and one thing I believe in beyond all reasonable doubt is when a baby comes into the world, a baby is connected directly to source, and it's through our experiences, how we're preconditioned, and how society teaches us, the rules and life lessons and so on. So it doesn't, when you said about the whisper saying to you, you're not meant to know this, you're not meant to be disconnected, because I feel that you are connected as soon as you were born, but as your childhood goes on, you lose that connection. So it doesn't surprise me at all that you were able to have that, because anyway, I'm going off on a side tangent. You'll notice this on the Soul Sync, we go down rabbit holes. But so you were, so to kind of go back to the story then, tell us where we went from then, because 6 months old, having this absolutely vile time, no stimulation, no love, no nurturing. There's not any of the basic necessities that are
yeah,
needed for a child.
yeah, that's right. So it was 5 months old, and it's interesting because it correlates with what your question correlates with uh, what I say to people. Every negative, you have to find a positive in it. Now, my mother was highly neglectful and highly abusive. So the next thing I remember um, is that I was in my diaper and she threw me into the wall. And she would do that. And I'd crawl back up into the bed, and she would throw me and she would yell at me and she'd say, your chin is in my chest. And, um, just get away from me. Like, what don't you understand? And so then I remember crawling back into my room. And then things like she would pick me up and I'm still in diaper. And that's, I know at 2 years old, there was no more diaper wearing. Uh, and she would, yell at me and she'd say, you're not the same since I shook you last time. So this time I won't shake you. I mean, these are things that I remember. Now, the reason that I find that, yes, these are horrible things. I don't ever want to go through it again in another lifetime. But it was as if maybe I would have forgotten whispers. Maybe I would not have connected and kept connecting with whispers had she have become a loving person, had I had somebody intervene and give me what I longed for, which was loving or understanding, some kind of wisdom, some kind of explain this thing to me, what's going on. So in my moments where I was uh, waking up from being unconscious from her beating me, and in very hard torment, the same thing like when I was in 5 months old, how come, where is the love? Where is the help? Where is somebody coming to hold me? He'd step in because I'd be asking this question. I would push. Why? 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 And he'd come to me and he'd give me answers like, I said, how am I supposed to be a mother one day? I really want to be a mother one day, but how am I supposed to be a mother? How am I supposed to learn how to be a mother from this? And he said, you will learn what not to do. And from that, you will be a good mother. And I got solace from that. I got solace from that. And so every time she slapped me, it kind of threw me back into the arms of, at the beginning, I used to call him Global because I asked him, what do they call you? You know, and he'd say, he said global, but I didn't understand global. So I said, oh, global. And it made sense to me because when he first really, when I said global, I felt that whole luminescence, not only from outside of me and the whole room light up, but he wanted to make sure, I think, that I knew that we were connected, that he shined everything within me too. It was such a luminescence. I've never felt that before or after, but I think that answers some of your questions
Mm.
that you were asking me there. How is it, that
Mm.
uh you can remember those things, and why is it I'm still connected to him and he still gives me such amazing advice. And I do write about it in the second story that there was one time I could not pay attention to him. I tried. My mother kicked me out to the park, and it was a day where there was nobody in the park. And he told me, you do not want to be in the park. And I said, oh, all right. And I went back to the beauty parlor where she was. Well, she picked me up and she literally threw me out like this to land on my face and my hands.
And you
And
were how old at that point?
I was then 8 years old,
Okay.
8. And I write about a horrific experience. I was abducted, and it had something to do with 15 boys, and then more boys came, and I was abducted and I was abused, and it was very bad. But I write about it. And that, see, again, a negative, turn it into a positive, or else you can't live. It said 100% whispers, you are for real.
Mm.
Because if I really could have found a safe place that day, this would not have happened.
So to get to 8 years old, and obviously when the book whispers sinners and saints, we're not going to unpack the whole story here, but
Right, right.
um, I can't imagine what those years were like for you, and to have to go through that. Talk us through some more of the story, where we go from 8, as where you
Okay.
kind of left us off there.
Okay. So this eight, I actually go up to age 11 in the first story, and then in the second story, I have to backtrack. So I kept asking Whispers, okay, can you send me some help? I mean, I need some help. Send me some
Mm.
help. Finally, when I'm age 5, my grandmother comes out on a steamship. Took her a month of travel to get into America, and thank God for her. She is my saint of my story. I had another saint before her who was Mama Cass, who was a wee bit of an Irish woman, and I dearly loved her. She took me to, there was okay, that one is interesting because I was out, on the streets at 3 and 4 years old
My
on my
God.
own. And then I had, um, there was this one little boy that lived below us that I was supposed to take care of, but he was already an alcoholic. Uh, I told my mom he's drinking brown juice, and I had a sip of it because he made me. He said he was going to tell on me if I didn't, that I was not watching him. So I just took one little sip and I got violently ill. And I said, okay. I told my mother, that wound me back out on the street. And then Mama Koss came about, and she was wonderful. She did, I was able to be in her home. And I do talk about when I go in that I had to pass by an apartment that I felt darkness. I felt darkness. And I ran because I felt, oh, this is bad over here. I don't know what it is, but it's bad. Turns out that that person was a child molester that lived in that apartment. And I had played but with Barbie dolls, which I didn't like it was too complex. So you dress something and you undress it, and this little girl, I called her Yellow Hair. She had the Barbie dolls. Now, why I bring her in is because when I went into the pretzel shop, which is I had 3 cents for pennies, 3 pennies to buy pretzels, and I went in, and all of a sudden I heard, "Oh, there's danger in here." I looked around and I could zero in on who it was that was dangerous. And I said, okay, I bought my 3 pretzels, and this man grabbed me. And I said, oh, I got away from him, but I knew he was the bad guy. Now, Whispers, I said, oh, what time is it? It was a nervous habit I had. And he said, you got to get out of there, is what time it is. Okay. I looked at him, I studied him. He had liver spots. He was really a scary looking man. And the first thing I thought of is, oh my gosh, I'm okay, but I know that Yellow Hair, I worry about her. I got out of there, and then time went by, and I met up with Yellow Hair again after a while. And I was thinking, oh, she talks like in just tangents. It doesn't make any sense. What is going on here? And then Whisper says, just listen to her. She needs to tell you something. And then she started talking about a yucky monster. And I said, oh, I need to hear this. And she said, did you meet this man, the yucky monster? He gives you candy and it's not even good. And I said, oh boy. And then Mama Cass came out and she pulls me by my ear. She goes, you best not be talking to her no more, you know. And then the next thing I I I knew, I write about it, that was validation. She was in my life to give me validation that yes, Whispers told me that that guy was a child molester. You know these words later on.
Mm.
But then Mama Cass in turn, the next time I went to her house, she took me to St. Patrick's Cathedral. And that was just a magnificent, that became and still is my most favorite place on earth, is St. Patrick's Cathedral. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I hope I answered your question. I know
You did. I, I when did things start to did it get worse before it got better? How did you get to a place where your life started to go in a more positive direction?
Yeah, so I had more positive direction while Big Mama was alive. I actually, in my mind, told myself
So she was your mum's mum.
yeah, she was really my
Okay.
mother's mother, but when my mother wasn't around, I would call her Big Mama because in my mind I would say, that's my birth mother, but this is my Big Mama. Because, I needed that love and that healing, and the power of the mind is really like, for some reason, I knew you could tell yourself things, and I tried to manipulate things in my head so that I could live with live with my circumstances. Because even when my grandmother was alive and with us, if my mother saw me, you know, I was beat until I was unconscious. And So while my grandmother was with me, I mean, it was the first time I learned how to eat, and the first time there was cooking, and the first time I mean, I remember literally her making food and putting it in front of me. I remember it like it's yesterday. And she put it in front of me and I ate with my hands like an animal. And she stood in front of me. She goes, what is the what is this? And I'm thinking, well, how do you expect me to know how to do things? Nobody ever taught me how to do things. My mother never sat with me and ate. In fact, she never sat with us and ate. She never, where was I supposed to know? And so she sat down and she showed me and she said, this food is deserves better treatment. And she showed me fork and knife, and at least I ate with a fork and knife. She would bring home like chocolate Hershey bars and we would share them. And that to me is like, even today, if I see a Hershey's chocolate bar, I go, oh, a sign of from grandmother's love there. And I'll touch it. I might not buy it because it's too many calories, but I'll touch it. And, or cherries that I'll buy and I'll go, I know they're expensive, but they're a real treat. And then I can't stop. And if there's a twin cherry, I'll say, she always held up the twins and go, look at these funny guys. They're twins. How lucky they are to have each other. So there were very beautiful, warm moments with grandma. And but when she passed away, which happens in the second book, it actually gets worse on some hands. And then also, I get all the stories from my mom, that she tells me. And then that is why I love to tell stories. I just realized that like about 2 weeks ago from writing, why I love to share stories, why I am a story writer, storyteller, because while she's telling stories, she's not yelling, she's not screaming, and she's behaving. Yeah.
Hmm. What, when did you, because again, this still sounds like we're in a very negative time with your mum, even at that age, I is sort of beggars belief a bit that you're still going through this at that age.
Yeah.
When did, I'll ask you the same question, but I don't know how far down the road we have to go into the story, in
Oh,
terms of age. Where did, what was the kind of your experience through your teens then, and how did you, you know, what happened to you? What happened with your mum? I'm sort of sitting here on the edge of my seat,
yeah,
Nancy.
yeah. Oh.
Uh,
So my growing up, well, it goes into the second book. It's very, very different. I could tell you my story is very different, I think, than anything that I've anyway read. It's kind of goes along with that show Shameless. And I was looking for that title, but it was taken already. But my mother starts taking me down to 42nd Street. And so I'm looking at prostitutes and pimps. I'm looking at downtrodden people. And if a woman was a prostitute, I mean, a bag lady, she'd say that used to be a prostitute. That's why she's a bag lady. I mean, we would have characters that would come into our home that we had a five bag. I called her five bag Lola because she had five shopping bags that uh, my mother would have her stay over. And she was a Holocaust survivor. So then we would hear stories about the Holocaust surviving. We would have some very just not normal people, not the regular kind of people that you have tea and crumpets. It was definitely very, very different. And then also I started having, at 3 years old, I saw the first time I was able to predict two people were going to die, and they died right the way that I said. Then at 11, I go through predicting that my grandmother was going to die, which was really, 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 really hard for me. And I put my life out on the line there because my mother said she was going to put me in a, what do they call it back then, in a sane asylum. That was a big thing in the household. If you were ugly or you didn't behave well, you were going to go be put on a mountaintop. So that was, I write about that. It was a real fear of mine. Uh, it was always said, if you don't behave and you're ugly, you're, that's what people did in the Greek times and back home. People would disappear. And so when I had told my mother that, this is the last time, if we let grandma go out on her birthday, it was her 56th birthday, she was going to die. And it happened that way. I never saw her again. But then it was okay because again, everything negative. It was not. I didn't have a joyful life. A few bleak moments of, here I am, 11 years old, and I'm as tall as my grandmother and my mother. I'm like 5'7" or 5'6" already at that age, and my grandmother would have $1. She would take me to the Central Park and she'd buy me a red balloon for $1. And that was big because we did not have money for like $1 for a balloon. But what that did for me, like, oh, I go out and buy myself a red balloon on my birthday because it it symbolized, she'd make a big deal out of it. She would tie it to my buttonhole, and she'd say, because you get all A's and you're a smart girl and you're a good girl, you deserve this. We could be eating on this dollar, and I would take it like it was almost like my Oscar trophy. And I'd
Mhm.
parade around holding my grandmother's hand. And here I have my Oscar trophy. Here's my balloon. You see me? Because inside I was just a little kid that never got to experience childhood. And with that red balloon, it was experiencing childhood. Yeah. So little glimpses of happiness there. But this is my childhood now. You say, when was it really that I got to experience some freedom from everything?
Mm.
Believe it or not, I was 59 when my mother died. And I then am now born. I am now able to be and come and be truly who I am, because even though she was aged, I would be on the phone with her and talk to her for 3 hours every day. And during those 3 hours, it was not pleasant. She could hold it together for maybe 45 minutes. And for another 2 hours and 15 minutes, she's drilling me in the ground. So the next day,
Oh my
whatever it took.
goodness.
Yes,
Why
yes,
did you continue to? Because you
yes.
strike me now as, talking to you now as a
Hmm.
very loving, a very kind person. When did you get out of, I guess, living with her and
Yeah. So when did I move away from her? It
yeah.
was wonderful to go to college. Those were my best. I would say college was wonderful. It was so freeing because I moved to where did she live? She lived in New York. I left when I was 17. And I said, okay, I'm out of here. Because she always threatened me at 5 years old. I remember grabbing her hand and saying, Mommy, I'm so happy to be with you. This is wonderful. I love you so much. And I went to grab her hand and she slapped me down on the ground and she said, I can't wait for you to get out of here. And I said, what age is that? Because I wanted to hear, like, what age you expected me to be out of here? And she said at 18. And so at 17, I was like every day waking up going, oh my God, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? I'm not waiting till 18 because who knows what's going to happen? The big,
Mm.
you know, cloud that comes with the bomb. I'm not waiting for that. So at 17, I said, I was in college at FIT, Fashion Institute of Technology. I was living with her and her husband. She had remarried that year. And I was like a third wheel anyway, and she had pinned us against each other. We got along great, but she pinned us. So I said, okay, I'm leaving. 17. It was difficult. I lived with rats. I mean, what kind of living can you make, right? At 17. I worked at a bank. I lied. I said I was 18. I had to make money. I had to put food on the table. I had 80 cents to live on for food a day. And I did uh, very good at saving money. I did save money because you never know. But
What got you through that time? How did you, because you had no support network, how did you cope?
that was really difficult how I got through that time. I think through that time, I think there was a time period when I had gone to high school down in Miami Beach. So I did have one friend that worked at McDonald's. And I do remember asking her for like a break on the meal. And I had gained a lot of weight because um, I was eating Oreo cookies. There was a connection there with Mama Cass. She'd give me Oreo cookies. And so I was feeding myself Oreo cookies, giving myself love. And she said, back then, my name was Anna. And she'd say, Anna, you can't do this. You don't look good. You're like, what, this is not healthy. So I said, oh yeah, I guess I needed somebody to tell me that. But how did I get through? I didn't get there in writing it and sorting it all out. I know that I reconnected with, I think I might have let him go a little bit, Whispers. And I think I reconnected back in college when I had somebody say to me, I want to see how much you can take. They were really out to, they said, I don't believe you're as good as you say you are, because I really was a goody two shoes. And
Mm.
just this person did not want to believe that I was as good as I was. This is actually getting now into my third book that I'm going to write.
Well, after everything you're
Yeah.
telling me, I don't think you could have possibly got it all in one. That's
Yeah.
there's so much. I could understand why it's spilling over to 2 and now 3.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. 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 It's, I don't know. That was just rough. That was just grinding through and realizing that, yeah, I need to go to college because I am a little smarter than I thought, and I can't put food on the table at age 17, 18. I'm not going to go far. And I was giving advice to other people, other kids my age that would come in and crying. And one of the vice presidents happened to be in earshot and heard my guidance to her, and they said, "You're going to college, right?" And I said, I don't know. I mean, I'd like, I don't, and there's nothing to think about. You have to go to college because we were listening in on your advice. That was such a nice thing for somebody to say, such nice, kind words. It's all I needed was always just a little push. I never had anybody say, like, even when I did stellar well on my tests to go to college, and in high school, my 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 mother came in to talk to the dean at high school and said, she had a Hungarian accent. This one, she deserves to go to college. This one, like this one here, you think it's worth it?" And he's looked at my grades and he's looking and he says, "We have over 750 children in the school, in her class, and she ranked 18th. If she doesn't go to college, who does?" And she said, my mother says, "Oh God, I can only imagine how stupid the rest of them are."
my goodness.
She's a piece of work. So,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. So just a nice, kind word like that. So then I applied for college. I got in, and that was really eye-opening and wonderful. Yeah, yeah. Then I met my husband and I got married 2 weeks later, and a divorce 20 years later. So that was fine too. It's all good.
Why did you continue to put up with your, because like you said, your mum, um, lived till for a very long time.
86, 86. Yeah. She
Yeah,
was
and
86.
it sounds like, her, I'm just trying to, and obviously I can never put myself in your shoes, but after what you endured,
Yeah.
why did you continue to have a relationship with her, and not just have a relationship with her, but you also, were sort of doing what a daughter would do in terms of talking, having a relationship, and whatever. What made you do that?
I have a couple of words that come in mind. One of them is I wondered if it was a martyr syndrome. I wonder if it was Munchausen syndrome. I did study psychology just so I could figure out my mother. That's why I went into psychology at school. But I do believe it also has to do with I had become her mother at starting at age 10. I had to tell her how to dress. She would come to me for advice and I would give her advice. I would give people advice starting at age 10. I was the 80-year-old. They'd always say, this one, you could talk about anything in front of her. She's 80 years old.
Well,
And
you were connected to your level of wisdom, experience, the direct connection you had to that of, whispers. I can imagine, I can understand why that, probably was, well, why that was the case.
yeah, I think so. I think so. If I needed to, I mean, I would, see things. I would see, I see demons and mists. And after a while, she started to listen to me when it came to the spiritual things. And in the end of life, I did study Kabbalah and I did study Buddhism for like 3.5, 4 years. I took all the classes down in the monastery down in Atlanta when I moved to Atlanta. But I stayed because I felt that maybe because I did not have a brother or a sister, maybe it was because she was like a child of mine. And also, having studied the Buddhism, I was thinking, karma, if I could finish this cycle, there's got to be, because it was my mother, I had to learn the lessons. And maybe in another life, I used to say this, I don't do I remember other lives? Yeah, I do, but I don't remember her in my other lives. But what if I would have, what if she was my child in another life? What if I did those things to her and now it's payback time? It's like, oh no, I have to fill this as they call samsara, this circle of life
Mm,
in,
yes.
give it all my best and wish her the best and do the best that I can because I never want to go through this again. And what if all this then is why I have to write my books because I had to go through all this suffering? How do you help other people that don't have the true compassion from
Mm,
suffering? So just like I had pointed out, that lady had said, just you need to go to college, you deserve it. Those kind little few little words sent me to go to college. And words are so powerful. Tone is so powerful. Messages, if we stop thinking about dividing, and let's just think about how we can help each other, like go around the campfire like we did in Neanderthal days and go, hey, if you go out there and you see a woolly mammoth and it's got horns like this, maybe you don't run straight and maybe you use this arrow and you don't use that arrow. And this scar tells you that.
mm, mhm. To ask, your story, Nancy, is just absolutely mind blowing, and I'm definitely going to read your book myself. tell us how do you live your life now then? What's your relationship with whispers? Is there a happy ending to the story?
Yes, very happy ending. And it really is overall, you really do have to turn every negative into a positive. And there's a lesson in every negative situation. All it is a tap on the shoulder. You meet somebody and they don't talk to you right. And you go, okay, I know I'm being tested. So what is it that they're really telling me? Okay. Well, from taking my Buddhist philosophy, this is not a religion, but by studying philosophy, I've gained some tools where I can say, ego, uh-huh,
Mm.
uh-huh. Well, she's not just doing that to me. She's doing that to other people too. That's her nature. Now I can laugh at it. Okay, I'm good. You see? And it's wonderful. And then I've learned just last week, I said, you sent me this person. I and whispers, I said, and I talked to Mother Mary and I talked to Holy Father, Archangel Michael, guardian angels, all of it, all of it. I say, I'm sending them back to you. And do give me a sign that I know that everything is now in a closure. Okay.
Mm.
So, very interesting. This just happened last week. This same person sent me a photograph of something. She went into her bedroom and there was a picture of a ghost bird. I do have a picture of it still on my phone. And she knew to send it to me. Now I didn't answer her back because there's no reason. I got my validation that the universe had sent me that I asked for. And it was enough to maybe get her to think, well, what is this? What is this? See,
Mm.
it's like what I'm saying is there's a universal connection, things that happen that if you keep that third eye open, it will give you these wonderful gifts. So even though she said those negative things, she just wasn't acting right. And I was like, oh, a lot of people don't like her. So I know it's not me, but you know, send it back to you, God. You do what it is, but send me some validation. Look at the beautiful gift I got. I didn't go instead what a lot of people get angry, they get bitter, they're wasting their time and their energy. And this girl, she did that. And blah. I was like, no, I'm taking this, taking the chi.
I everything you say, I so get. And do you know what? My belief is, I don't know, we all have different beliefs, but I believe that you are probably a very, very, very old soul because your soul must have picked a really tough incarnation this time. But I think your story is incredible. And if people do want to find out more about the book, obviously you can go to the show notes where the link will be there. Nancy, I often ask, and I definitely want to ask you this, to leave us on a final thought for the episode today. A final thought or a pearl of wisdom or something you'd like to end the show on.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. Well, my philosophy that I've come up with is one who laughs loudest masters pain the best.
Do you know what? Short and sweet, but beautiful. It's all in the messaging. I like it. I like it. Nancy, honestly, your story is just, I think if there isn't a story that shows you, well, how one can use an awful situation, and bring out the positive in it, then I don't know what your story just blew me away. Honestly, I'm sat on the edge of my seat still. All I would say is, thank you so much for you're a very good storyteller, and I think you explained what happened to you in, the most wonderful way. So thank you for coming on to the Soul Sync.
Oh, thank you so very much for having me, Jason. I so very much appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Wasn't Nancy the most lovely person with the biggest heart? I literally was gripped, and I even sent this audio to my mum. I said, you have to listen to this story. I'm certainly going to be buying both of Nancy's books because I definitely want to read more into what she's experienced. So thank you for joining me on this week's edition of the Soul Sync podcast. Please remember to follow the show so you can get notifications when the latest episodes are out. Also, if you go over to my YouTube channel, just search Jason Paul Soul Sync, you can get more content and wisdoms and listens from me when I can actually get round to recording them. So do subscribe, there is more content over there. And that just leaves me to say thank you for joining me. Much love until next week. And I'm going to clock off now because I'm going to have a break. Goodbye.